As we enter into the second day of the Esports World Cup here, some big news is coming in from the US. At the Sinquefield Cup, we have Praggnanandhaa, who has just beaten Javokhir Sindarov, the World Championship challenger, and that too in a classical game. Can you believe it? Pragg recently won the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz, and he did that in convincing style. But now in classical tournament, just after 3 days, he plays the guy who played incredible chess at the candidates, and he won it. And I think the game was incredible. It began with the Queen's Gambit declined. Pragg was white, and he had some excellent preparation. H3, G4, trying to expand on the king side, and at some point, he plays the bishop to D3. And this is where I was thinking, what if black takes on D3, Queen D3 and takes on G4? Turns out, Praggnanandhaa would have had some prep here, and so Sindarov said, let me not go into this. What I will do is just play it simple, and he played it very, very well. There was opposite side castling, but knight took the bishop on f4, and e takes f4 did happen. At this point, there was a lot of pressure on the f4 pawn, but the bishop was taken on d6, queen takes d6, and then queen was on d2, f4 was a bit weak, d4 was a bit weak. It seemed like white was doing okay, but black was doing completely fine. f5 was needed here for black. If you take on f5, the pawn structure is ruined. If you play g5, there are tactics. Hg, fg, knight g5. You take the knight, I take on e2. And I think Sindarov somehow didn't feel it, and he played queen b4, a bad move. Because once this happened, queen takes queen, a takes b4, and already the b4 pawn was a bit weak. The knight jumped to g3. And you know, the thing is that in such a position, white was already pressing because knight was coming to f5. Sindarov had to play his rook to a4 to defend that pawn. And then when he thought that he had gotten the rook to e4, actually, to attack the pawn on f4, rook e3 came. And the point is, if you take on f4, f3 is played, and the rook is trapped. So rook takes e3, f takes e3, and the structure is really, really good for white. In fact, if you see this position, Pragg is dominating. He can bring his king up, but he tried to break the center very quickly by playing rook e1 and e4, which was logical. But here Javokhir tried to fight back a bit, and the position got really complex. When Javokhir played g6, I think Pragg shouldn't have taken on g6. This let the Uzbek GM come back in the game after hg6, king g6. He was back in there. Pragg tried to checkmate him. Rook came to g8, and then started the race. Pawn started to get captured, and then Javokhir was left with an f-pawn. Pragg had two pawns on the queen side, and it seemed like, okay, this position should be better for Pragg, but Javokhir defended so well. In fact, he even let Pragg give a fork to his king and rook, because he could attack the rook back. And in this knight endgame, if this did happen, it's a draw. Pragg was all the time trying for a rook endgame, because the two pawns would be very strong in a rook endgame. But slowly and steadily, the position moved ahead, and it felt like we were heading towards a draw when Javokhir blundered with knight e3. He should have played rook g8. The moment he played knight e3, Pragg found this amazing maneuver of knight d4 check, knight e2, and then moving the rook, coming to c3. And then slowly his pawn started to move. The a pawn moved, the b pawn moved, and he went on to win the game. Very, very good play by Praggnanandhaa. And now he joins the leader at 1.5 out of 2. And if Pragg can do well in Sinquefield Cup, winning the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz, then Sinquefield Cup, Norway Chess will just cement his space as one of the best players in all formats. Let's see if that happens. Meanwhile, in the women's section, Alice Lee is playing brilliantly. She won her game, and she's on 2 out of 2 now. She beat Divya Deshmukh. Humpy lost her game to Tan Zhongyi, and Vaishali drew her game with Bibisara Sobaeva. Right now, Tan Zhongyi and Alice Lee are leading. Well, I'll keep giving you updates like this. For now, this is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye-bye.